somebody changes his password, you know, when a password is changed, it can't go to all the domain controllers at once. Because at any point in time, when you are being authenticated to the network, it is one domain controller that authenticates you. Even if you have 100 of them, it will always be one of them that authenticates you at a time.
Oh, yes, sir. Welcome back.
I keep real that this network becomes stable. I don't know why MTN has become this way these days. All right. So as I was saying, let's take it that someone changes his password. Are we okay? Now, when there is that change of password, the password does not go to all the domain controllers at once. One domain controller will have to receive the new password and then tell the other domain controllers that this user called Luis has changed his password. And so this is the new password. You should all update your database. And then they will all receive the information and then update their database. So this is to ensure that you don't have different copies of the user's account. So there are certain activities that only certain domain controllers can perform. So in every forest, there are at least 5 operations masters roles that are assigned to one or more domain controllers. Now, the operations masters roles also come in 2 forms. We have forest-wide operations masters roles, and then we have domain-wide operations masters roles. If a role is forest-wide, it means that in the entire forest, it only appears once. This means that if you take, let's say, for example, Microsoft Corporation, with all the other subsidiaries that they have, if they are all joined to the same forest called Microsoft, then there can be only one forest-wide operations master role. So in this case, there are 2 operations masters roles that are classified as forest-wide operations masters. And these are the schema master and then the domain naming master. These 2 must appear once in the entire forest. So even if you have a multi-domain environment, you can only have one schema master and then one domain naming master. So the question is, what is a schema master? Now, those of you who are familiar with databases, when it comes to databases, we have what we call schema. The schema is basically the configuration database that describes all the available objects and function types in Active Directory. So what this means is that anything that you can do within Active Directory has already been predefined in a data dictionary called the schema. When you take an object like, let's say, user, by default in the Active Directory, there is an object called user. And then under this user, the user has
Every day he's living.
Joshua, please mute yourself. All right. So, as I was saying, the schema has the definitions of everything that can be created in Active Directory. So when you take, for example, an object called user, the user will have attributes. So the attributes will be things like first name, last name, password, that kind of thing. So these are the proper go through this fast before the next one goes off. And please, if I'm going too fast and you have a question to you, let me know. Okay. Irrespective of the fact that we are having this little challenge, but let me know when you have any question. All right. So as I was saying, the schema master is basically the data dictionary. It contains objects, class, and then attributes. So every object class maybe group, OU, everything that you have in the Active Directory is defined in the schema. So the schema master domain controller controls all the updates and modification to the schema. So what does this mean? So this means that if for any reason your domain controller that is holding your schema master goes off, it means that you cannot edit your schema. And so to update the schema of the forest, you must have access to the schema master. There can be only one schema master in the entire forest. So if you want to, but mostly the schema is not something that you will manually edit unless you really need to, because whenever you are even doing installation and there's any object that requires to be created in the schema, during the installation process, it will alter the schema and then create whatever object needs to be created in the schema. So you personally do not necessarily need to go and play in the schema, but I'll show you where the schema is. Then we have the domain naming master. Now the domain naming master controls the addition or removal of domains in the forest. What does this mean? So it means that if you take any forest, there can be only one domain, unique domain name in there, meaning that you can't have two domains having the same name. And this cuts across globally. That is why you can't have another google.com, another yahoo.com. You may try to create it with something that looks like it, but not necessarily the same name, because there are servers in place that ensures that no two domains have the same name. So only one domain controller in the forest can also have this. So it controls the addition of domains in the forest. So it ensures that no two domains have the same name. Then when it comes to the domain wide means that if we have a forest and we have about 5 domains under the forest, each of the 5 domains will have their own RID master, their own PDC master, and their own infrastructure master. So if you have 5 domains under one forest, each domain will have its own RID master, its own primary domain controller, PDC, and then its own infrastructure master. But for the schema master and the domain naming master, they can only appear once in the forest. So basically, when we say the PDC emulator, this is the server that processes password changes. So whenever a user changes their password, it is this server that will receive the new password and then replicate it to all the other domain controllers. Then we have it also does what we call time synchronization. So it ensures that all the domain controllers in the environment have the same time. So this server is responsible for that. And again, let me reiterate that when you do the first installation, the first domain controller that you set up has all the 5 roles. So if we add a second domain controller, then we can decide to move some to that domain controller, or we can decide that all should be on the first domain controller. Then we have the infrastructure master. So the infrastructure master also ensures that there is consistency amongst the domain controllers. I don't know if you took notice of the when we're doing the configuration of the second domain controller, there was a notification that the server that is the infrastructure master is also a global catalog. And so the system was prompting us that it is better for us to remove the infrastructure master from the global catalog server. This is the reason why. When you have a server that is a global catalog server, this server receives automatic updates from every other domain controller in the forest, but it does not necessarily update the other domain controllers. So to ensure that there is uniformity amongst the servers in the environment, you may decide to make all your servers global catalog servers. Then in that case, they will all update each other. But in the situations where you have standardized domain controllers and then you have global catalog servers, and you want to even things amongst them, the best thing that you need to do is to remove the infrastructure master from the server that is the global catalog server and put it on a server that is not a global catalog server. Once this is done, the infrastructure master will always check with the global catalog server to see if there is any data that it is missing. When it finds any data that it is missing, it will update itself. And after updating itself, it will update the other domain controllers in the forest. So this is the reason why the infrastructure master is very, very important. Then, So it says that unless there is only one domain controller in the domain, the infrastructure master role should not be assigned to the domain controller that is hosting the global catalog server. Because if the infrastructure master and the global catalog are on the same server, the infrastructure master will not function. The infrastructure master will never find data that is out of date, so it will never replicate any changes to the other domain controllers. So in the case where all the domain controllers in the domain are hosting the global catalog, then all of the domain controllers will have the current data, and it does not matter which domain controller holds the infrastructure master. Yes, Della?
So I want to ask, what is the difference between the infrastructure master and then the schema master? Is there any difference?
So, yes, the schema master holds the writable copy of the schema. And I explained that the schema is the database of the Active Directory. If you have done any database before, you realize that
Yeah.
before you create a database, you have to define all the things that can be in the database. So the
Sure.
schema is the what was the name? Is the database of the Active Directory. So the schema master controls editing the schema.
Okay.
Is it clear?
Yes.
And then the infrastructure master, all that it does is that it ensures consistency amongst domain controllers, meaning that it's ensuring that if I have a user called Kojo that I directly created on the DC1, that Kojo should also be available on DC2.
Okay.
Is it clear?
Okay. Yes, sir.
If I create
Thank
an
you.
OU on DC1, that OU should be available on all the other domain controllers.
Okay.
Can I proceed?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right. Any more questions? All right, let's proceed. Then we have the RID master, relative identifier. So the RID master assigns security identifiers and then relative identifiers. Its goal is simple. No two objects in Active Directory should have the same identity. This is the reason why if you create a user called Luis Opoku Jenfi and then you delete it and you create the same user again, it is never the same user account, even though physically it may be the same human being that you have created the account for. To the system, it is not the same person because the system does not use the name to identify it. The system uses the SID and then the RIDs to identify it. So basically what the RID master does is it ensures that no two objects have the same name. It ensures that no two objects have the same name. So long as they are in the same path, then they should not have the same name. Because if I have and directly under the root domain, if I have an OU called Luis, I cannot have another OU called Luis under the same root, but I can have another OU called Luis inside the parent OU called Luis because it's not the same. The path has changed. So the RID master ensures that no two objects have the same name. So if for any reason your RID master goes off, it means that any object you create, you can't really create any object because the object will not have an identifier in the first place for it to exist in your Active Directory. So all these things exist to make sure that the domain environment can function as it's supposed to be. So though you can do everything, the same thing on the Active Directories, there are certain things that only one has to do on behalf of all the others and make the others aware of it. So that is what we call the operations masters. So you need to know in your environment which server has all the operations masters, so that if for any reason any server has to be taken offline, you make sure that the right thing is done before that server is taken offline, which is to move the roles to a different domain controller. So you can transfer or you can seize an operations master's role. So when you create a new domain or forest, all the operations masters are located on the first domain controller by default. So you might want to change them for several reasons. Are we okay? So you can transfer the operations master role to another domain controller when the original role holder is still available and functioning. The following are some of the reasons. So it could be that you want to perform load balancing. So you don't want one server to be doing all the activities. You may move some to other servers. And then maybe you want to perform scheduled maintenance on the primary domain controller. You may want to move the roles to a different server, and after it is done, you bring it back. Or sometimes the reason may be that the role holder may be across the wide area network, and then that is generating excess traffic that you don't want to deal with. So you can have move it to a server that is localized so that it will be easy. And then when there is any one other reason too is that you want to make sure that the infrastructure master is not on the global catalog server. So this is also one reason why you may want to move some of the rules, especially the infrastructure master rule, from the global catalog to a different server that is a standard domain controller. So in general, a rule of thumb is that the schema master and the domain naming master should be on the same server. This is because at the end of the day, whenever you are creating new domains, it has to check with the schema to make sure that everything is okay. And then also it makes it easy if you want to back up the server, because the schema, you don't have to back up the schema master separately and then the domain naming master separately. So this is a rule of thumb for system administrators. So you can transfer the 3 domain-wide operations masters role from the Active Directory users and computers console. So let's quickly look at this, and then we'll come back to see how we can transfer the others. So I'm going to power on my server. If you have a question, you can ask. With this, it's not something you configure. They are there. You just need to know that they exist and that you can use them, so that when you are making certain decisions, you are guided accordingly. So I'm powering on my 2 domain controllers. All right, so whilst they come on, if you have a question, you can ask. I think this is taking long because the domain controllers were shut down. They were, I think yesterday, out of frustration, instead of pausing them, I shut them down. I hope we are still on the call. All right, so I think that we can log in now. All right, so I think this is DC. This is DC2, and then this is DC1. All right, so I'm going to be on DC1. And then we'll go to Tools, Active Directory, Users and Computers. All right, so we are here. And you can actually switch between the two servers directly from here. You can see currently we are in Active Directory Users and Computers DC1, right? When I right click this, I can change domain controller. And then we'll ask me which domain controller do I want to go on. So you can see I have DC1 and then what? DC2. So I can say I want to switch to DC2 and then say okay. And after some times, I'm on DC2, right on the screen of the DC1. So you can actually just switch between the domain controllers right from one of them, even though I'm into, because they're all using the same Active Directory database. So let me switch back to DC1. All right, so you can see I'm back on DC1. And then when I right click on the domain, and then I go to Operations Masters. So you can see it is here. Operations Masters is there. So you can see the three that we spoke about, RID Master. So the RID Master manages the allocation of RID pools to other domain controllers. Only one server in the domain performs this role. So you can see that Operations Master is DC1 and we are on DC1, so we can't transfer to DC1. But if we want to say transfer to DC2, then we'll have to switch to DC2. I don't want to do the change in the Active Directory change, but then I mean you can just do it from there. So you go back to the Active Directory Users and Computers, and then we right click here, go to Operations Masters. So you can see that we are on DC1. And if we want to change it to DC2, it's just a matter of being on the server that you want to change it to and then clicking change. That's all. So it says, are you sure you want to transfer the Operations Master role? I say yes. It says the Operations Master role was successfully transferred. Okay, so you can now see that it is on DC2. So if we should switch to DC1, and then I come back to Operations Masters here, you can see that now the RID Master is on DC2. And then if I go to PDC, you notice that PDC is on DC1, and then the Infrastructure Master is also on DC1. But remember, one of the things that we need to change is the Infrastructure Master. So I can just click change, but I need to be on the other server. So I'll switch to DC2 once again, and then Operations Masters. Go to the Infrastructure Master, which we know is on DC1, and then click change. And I think we know the reason why we are changing this, so that the global catalog server does not have the Infrastructure Master. So this is done. When I come to domain controllers here, you can see we have two domain controllers. DC1 is a global catalog server, and then DC2 is a normal domain controller. And our servers are in sync. So if I create a new OU here, this is DC2, organizational unit, and then I call it, let's say, we already have risk, right? Okay, we don't have risk. So let's say we have risk as a department. We have risk as a department. And I think, okay. Well, I just said risk. So let's say we have this risk here. When I switch to DC1 and then I refresh this, you can see the risk is there. Are we okay? So there are real-time replication between them. So this makes sure that the systems are on time, and if anything happens to one of them, the other one is clearly going to be capable of taking care of the environment. So That is how the domain controllers function. That's how they function. Now, your two domain controllers are not capable of running. Sorry, if you're
Please, you can pause the recording, Avin.
oh well, at least we are back. So let's continue. All right, so I'm introducing my client machine so that we can see how things go on the client side also. So we are going to join the client machine to the domain and then see how we can manage things from there and see how we can. All right, so share screen. All right. I think with the way the network is treating us um, this evening and probably the evenings that have come, maybe over the weekends, when we get the opportunity, we should look at doing more so that we can cover more during the weekend when the opportunity is there. Oh, so let's give this thing some small time. So whilst this is trying to come up, let me walk us through the outcome of the Nessus report. The outcome of the Nessus report. So the good thing is that I think with the Server 2022, Microsoft has done well because most of the common vulnerabilities that usually you will find in the environment, most of them have been taken care of, and that is a good thing. So okay, so this is the scan we did yesterday, the other time, AD scan. And when you click on it, you can see that we have um the two servers, and all the alerts we got are informational. All the alerts we got are all informational. Informational basically means that the system is just giving you information about some of the things on the system. If you pick any of them, it's just informational. It's just informational. It's just informational. So it's just telling us the ports that have been enabled on the system. And these are standard Windows ports. These are standard Windows ports. These are standard Windows ports. So it's mainly informational. So if we were to be doing proper security class and we're looking at hacking or something, then the next thing we would have done is we would have probably run nmap against these ports and then look at the versions of the ports that are running to see whether there are any known vulnerability for any of these versions, and then we can try to exploit them. But maybe later we can run nmap against these to see what they are. That is if at the end of our sessions we have extra time to spare. So you should also run the Nessus, and then let's see the feedback that you get. Maybe my system is lying to me. So you can also run the scan, and let's see the feedback that you get. And let's see the feedback that you get. And let's see the feedback that you get. So it's just information. Informational, there is nothing alarming. If at the end of the scan, when you open and then you see these colors, the red, the high, and the medium, then you have a problem. Then it means that you need to find what those issues are and then try to fix them. But then with these
How long has it been off?